Hey everybody, it's Mr. Wagstaff. Cool stuff to talk about this unit. This unit, we're starting a new one. The start of the unit. And Economic and Personal Finances is Unit 6. This is on money management. So today, we're going to start talking about creating a spending plan and a budget and how those things are different and the things that go into making those decisions on how to allocate your resources. Let's get started. So this entire unit is on money management. If you have money, how to get the most out of it. All right, that's what we're discussing today. So one of the first things that we have to talk about today is the concept of fiscal responsibility. All right, so if you've ever hear people complain about it's hard being an adult and you're like, well, they don't know what it's like in being in high school. We have homework all the time. It's always changing. Like, oh, I just want to be able to, be on my own and things be easy. So it's not. We're going to talk about today about creating a budget and a spending plan and the necessity for that so that you can be smart with your money. Because if you're not and you don't make spending plans, you don't make budgets, you don't allocate your resources correctly, it can snowball into a really negative cycle of debt and you're not going to be able to live the lifestyle that you want and it'll affect your overall happiness. So this is like homework that you have all the time the rest of your life of managing your resources and your ability to try to avoid as many disasters as possible because they can happen at any time. So this is extremely important, especially here when you're younger, because if you make really bad decisions when you're younger, it can snowball and be very difficult to get out of later. So this isn't something that you can worry about in 10 years, in 5 years, when I get there. Being fiscally responsible, being smart with your money, responsible with your money is important from the very start. Incredibly important from the start, because if you dig yourself a hole, it's really hard to get out of. So the number one way of being fiscally responsible is create a spending plan. So a spending plan is literally, what are you going to spend your money on? All right, you have money, what am I going to spend it on? All right, sounds simple enough, and honestly, none of it's super difficult. It's just about being consistent, all right, holding yourself responsible and making sure that you are hitting the goals you set for yourself. Not that it's super difficult to set these goals or to follow them, it's just the consistency of it, which is usually the hardest part. So you're going to start with a spending plan, all right? You have a job, you make money, your spending plan. Now, I want to be very clear, there is a difference between a spending plan and a budget. A spending plan is like the architect. You have these ideas, you put it here and there. It's like this general idea to start with. And the budget's like the engineer. The engineer actually has to make that work. The budget is not nice. Your budget that you make for yourself is not designed to be your friend. It is to hold you responsible. The spending plan, all right, informs what a budget is going to be. But a spending plan is basically your start here of how to be financially responsible. So if we're going to create a spending plan, you always have to start at the beginning. The first step and the most important step of a spending plan is step one, and that is to figure out your income. Step one, how much money do I have? You have to be very real about that. We did an assignment here where how much is $50,000 really? So if you have a job that makes $50,000 a year, you cannot make a spending plan based on $50,000 because after taxes and the other payroll deductions as we've talked about in the previous units, after that $50,000 is going to spend closer to $30,000. So you actually have to make your spending plan on your disposable income, your net income of what you are bringing home. So your spending plan is based on the money you actually have in your account. So the first thing you have to do is know your income and be very conscientious about that, because you can't have a spending plan that spends more than your income, or you're going to get yourself in a lot of trouble really quickly in debt, and that spirals into a bunch of different categories. So step one, figure out your income. Step two, find out what your expenses are. All right. You have to find out how much money that you are wanting to allocate to different locations, mainly what your expenses are. So you have your income, and then you come up with your expenses after that. You don't figure out how much money you want to spend, then go decide your income, because you literally can't do anything outside of your income. That is the big tent pole. Step one, determine how much money you actually have to spend and be honest with it. Don't just look at, hey, I got hired and here's how much money I make an hour. If I multiply that times 40 hours a week and I get paid every other week, you actually have to look at how much money ends up actually in your bank account and make a spending plan from there. So the question is, why is determining income such an important first step to determining a spending plan for fiscally responsible individuals? So pause me, answer that completely. We're moving on. All right, so you have to begin with the end in mind. That's a little catchphrase we use in education that if you're a teacher, we get tired of hearing that all the time. But look, here I am passing it on to you. But it is very, very important when it comes to money. When you make decisions on money, you have to have goals and think about the end in mind. You have to plan for the fact that things are going to change in the future. So you have to plan for your financial goals. You have to figure out what you want and why you want it. All right. So decide, okay, I just got a job. What do I want? I have money. All right. What is it that I actually want in life? And by making that decision, all right, you're going to come up with short and long-term goals. All right. There's stuff that you need to spend now. There's stuff that you're going to need to spend in the future. There's really three different types of goals that you can set for yourself financial. There's the short-term goals. There's your midterm goals, and then there's long-term goals. So short-term is basically stuff within like 1 year or almost immediately. That can be short-term goals like I need money, I need to allot this money for this. Your midterm goals, basically the stuff that you want to happen over the next 1 to 5 years, which is going to involve saving money. You can't, I say you can't. Fiscally responsible people don't spend all their money every month. That's going to seem super ridiculous to you, especially when you start working and you're not making a lot of money in entry-level positions. If you literally cannot save money, obviously you cannot. However, you're putting yourself in a very dangerous position, because without the ability to save for the future or save for some type of catastrophe that happens, that a hit and run on your car and your insurance claims that for some reason it's your fault and they won't pay for your new one, and then what are you going to do? If you don't have any money in savings, catastrophes can just build on top of each other and you can get into debt, and debt a lot of times just leads to more debt. And we'll talk more about that in this unit. So like midterm and long-term goals, stuff like 1 to 5 years, things you want to do in the future, and then longer term than that, you have to start setting money aside almost immediately. For that, even if it's a small amount, it is an extremely important thing for fiscally responsible people to do. You can't, living paycheck to paycheck, while that is what a lot of people do out of necessity, is not a sustainable lifestyle for the future. In order to live the lifestyle that you want and for overall happiness. So let me give you some examples of short-term goals. It's not all awful. So like short-term goals is like making sure you have enough money to pay rent. Or hey, in 2 months, there's this concert coming to town. I'm going to start squirreling away some money to be able to have that in 2 months. Those are short-term goals. All right. So midterm goals, this would be like, hey, I want to start saving up. I want to buy a new car in a couple years. I want to get my money together. Or hey, I want to buy a house and I have to have a down payment, which is usually 10 to 20% of the total cost of the house that you have to have in cash in order for a bank to give you a loan. That is very common. So that's what a down payment is. And having to save for that over the course of 5 years or so is very, very common. Long-term goals. Long-term goals, this is like retirement, or the idea that, hey, like I'm just getting into a skill, like I've become a welder, or I work as a mechanic, or I'm going to school to be a lawyer, and then in like 5 years it's like, hey, or more than that, 10 years, I want to have my own mechanic shop, I want to open up my own law firm, I want to start my own business. Those are like long-term goals that you got to start planning for now moving forward, because all these things take money. Starting a business isn't free. You have to have money saved up for that. So you have to start planning now for the future. So just sitting down and being like, whew, I'm good today, and then not thinking about what about tomorrow, the next year, the years after that, it usually doesn't turn out well. You have to think about the future. So once you come up with your goals, short-term, long-term, middle term, you want to allocate the funds to your spending plan. Meaning, how much money am I going to put towards my current goals? I'm just trying to pay rent now, versus my 5-year goal versus my retirement fund. How much money am I going to put into that? If you have a certain amount of money and you spend all your money, like, hey, I have enough money to afford a super, super nice apartment, and I can afford that right now, but I won't have any money to set aside and save, is that the most fiscally responsible thing to do? Or is it I can take a little less nice of an apartment and have a little bit of money to put aside for a car I want to buy in a few years, or a down payment on a house, or paying for retirement in the future? These are questions and things that fiscally responsible people have to deal with at all times. It is a daunting task as an adult, but it is something that we all have to handle. So the question here is, what is the purpose of allocating funds, all right, to each financial goal and creating a spending plan? And to clarify that, it is to prioritize your financial goals based on importance. What is the most important to you? All right, if your most important thing is having a nice apartment, that's what you're going to prioritize your money towards. If you're the most important thing to you is being comfortable in life and not having to stress over money, you're probably going to be saving some money and have a little less nice of an apartment or living situation, or have an additional roommate. Those are allocating resources is basically used to prioritize what is most important to you. And again, beginning life with the end in mind is very important, because if you start spending more money than you have now, it's really hard to stop that later on, because you have this cycle of debt, which is very difficult to get out of. And we'll talk about that in this unit. All right. So once you've allocated all this and you've put it where it needs to be, now it's time to create a budget. So, all right, this percentage is going here to here. A budget is where you're like, all right, I'm going to spend a maximum amount of this amount of money on this thing every month, and I won't go over. And then this amount of money, and this amount of money, and this amount of money, and all your budget should add up to be at or less than the amount of money you bring in all the time. Your budget that you made for yourself is non-negotiable. Your budget's not here to be your friend. Your budget is here to hold you responsible. This is where it's hard. So in your spending plan, you can be nice and, I'll move money here, here, here. Your budget is when you actually assign numbers to those individual things that you need to spend, all right? And you need to have money set aside for emergency fund, all right? Because crazy stuff happens in life. Happens all the time that you're not prepared for. You need an emergency fund. So you have to take your pie of however much money you're bringing in and divide that up to where you can effectively provide for yourself. Your budget is non-negotiable. If you go over your budget, you are in debt. What's the point of having a budget if you go over it? So when you make your budget, that is the thing that has teeth, and you have to hold yourself accountable to your budget. Not having a budget is, I would guess, the number one way people get themselves in debt and can't get out of it. So the budget is the enforcer of your spending plan. Now, when you're young, you're going to mess up a budget. That's fine. All right? You do not have to be perfect at this. People are not. Bad things happen, you recover from it, but if you're constantly working towards it, you're going to be fine. You're going to mess up your budget. You're going to go over your budget. You're going to have an unexpected expense that you weren't planning on, you didn't even know could happen. Like, hey, I didn't realize my washing machine was going to break, and then even though I'm renting, my landlord says it's my fault because I decided to put a whole cake inside it or whatever, and now he's charging me $400 for a new a new dishwasher. How am I going to pay for this? All right? Those types of things happen. And you learn from these things as you grow up. So when bad things happen and your budget falls apart, or you realize you allocated too much money to this one thing that you don't really need, or hey, I really thought I only needed like $50 a month to eat. You don't. You need way more than that. You learn, and then you monitor, adjust, and optimize. You turn around, you monitor, you adjust, and you change your behavior and your spending plan, and then your budget. All right, you have to adjust it to your lifestyle. And as you're young, there's going to be a constant thing that you have to do. All right, and I want to be very clear here. When I talk about writing out a budget, you're literally on a piece of paper or a computer or a phone and literally doing math. You're adding up how much your expenses are going to be and making sure it's at or less than the amount of money that you're bringing in. Homework doesn't stop after high school. Homework and managing money and stressing over due dates and stuff like that, that continues for life. But if you get on top of it and you understand it and you look at it from all angles, it's not something that's overwhelming. It's almost like you're getting a grade on it when everything works out well, and if you keep getting A's, fantastic. It's all about consistency, being realistic, and holding yourself accountable to the amount of money that you have versus what you're bringing in. You can't make a budget for money you wish you had. I'm going to make it big as a YouTube star one day and be making millions of dollars, so I'll make my budget off of that. I'm not worried about it now. Very easy way to get yourself in huge debt. So the question here is, what is the purpose of creating a budget and creating a spending plan? As we talked about, it's to track your spending and ensure that you stay within your allocated funds. It's to make sure that you don't go over the amount of money that you've allocated for different things. Your budget is not your friend. You made your budget to hold yourself accountable. It is extremely necessary to do that so you know exactly how much you can spend and how much free money you have left over. All right, so say you get the perfect spending plan, the perfect budget. You're like, boom, 5-6 months in a row. You're just, man, I even got a little extra money at the end of every month. Awesome, I've won at this. So life isn't fair. It's not. And you can't expect it to be. All right. All you can do is plan as much as you can. There are some clear variables that come into play because you are constantly going to have to change your spending plan. If it works this year and your budget and your spending plan work now, does not mean it's going to next year or the following year. You constantly have to be revising it because there's quite a few things that change over time. Variables that change your allocated resources, variables that change how much income you have. Usually that's a good one. Usually as you get older, you make more money. Hooray, so that can change your spending plan. Other things, one of the main things is age. When you're young, most likely you don't get sick a lot. Typically people get sick, they get more injured, as they get older and need more medical care. As you get older, your spending plan is probably going to have to spend more money on medical care. Even like from the time you're in your 20s, high five yourself. The amount of medical emergencies you're going to have in your 20s outside of going rock climbing and broke my arm, they are relatively slim. You get into your 30s and your body just starts getting older. It's a thing because age comes for us all at some point. So as we get older, our body is going to need more medical attention, and typically as we get older, we need more medical care as we get older. Our priorities also change. When you're in your 20s, you want to save up for a sports car. Cool. When you are a little older, you want to save up for other things. Say you've become wealthy, you've become very successful, and you want to save up. And you know what? We want to get a second house. We want to get a mountain house. We want to save up for that. So your budget starts changing you want to start adding more into retirement. You want to take a second mortgage out on your home to open a business. There's all these different things that you can do as you get older, but different priorities change as you get older, and the things that are important to you change as you get older. So age is a big variable that will change your spending plan over time. Another one is your individual needs. One of the biggest changes that will happen to your spending plan is if you ever decide to have kids. When you have kids, just take whatever spending plan you've ever had in your entire life, just take it over to the fireplace and throw it in the fire, because it's useless now. Your spending plan is drastically going to change when you're in charge of having another human that is your responsibility that you have to raise and turn into an adult. Your priorities change, your money changes, everything changes because your individual needs over time, and I'm just using, parenting as an example. But as you get older, your individual needs are drastically going to change, and your spending plan will change because of that. So the question here is, what should income and spending plans be tailored to? Your age and needs. If you're 23 and single and that's your age and needs. That's what your spending plan should be tailored to. If you're 50, all right, or even 30 or late 20s, and you get married or whatever changes happens, your spending plan has to be tailored to your age and whatever your needs are at that time. Those two things change all the time, so you constantly have to be updating your spending plan and then therefore your budget. So spending plans and budgets aren't group work, meaning they are very, very specific to individual people. Now, if you're married, all right, a lot of times you will have the same spending plan and budget, generally speaking. Or if you have a roommate that decides to do that, and y'all pool your resources. Marriage is probably the most common way that you'll have two people would have the same spending plan. So the thing is there's different types of income. Some people will make a lot of money and they have a different financial plan for how they want to allocate those resources. Whereas somebody who is working a minimum wage job is going to have a much stricter financial plan because they don't have as many resources to allocate to the different parts of their life. All right. But everybody still has to take care of the same financial things and think about the future. All right. So because of that, spending plans are unique to the individual person. They are unique to whoever is making it. You can't cheat off your neighbor's paper because their spending plan is different than yours. Probably no two spending plans on earth are the same unless it's like two people sharing one, just because of your location that you live at, your age, your personal likes and dislikes. What I'm trying to say is your spending plan is not a one size fits all. You can't go find a cheat sheet and find out how to make your spending plan. I can't provide that for you. I can't say, here's your three options, choose 1, 2, or 3. A spending plan is for you. You have to decide that. You have to decide what you want in life and how you're going to attain it. What you do need to do is make a plan for yourself. You can't ignore this. Now, you can. You're going to be an adult. You are an adult. Not going to make a plan. Cool. There's no grade on that. There's quite a few consequences that come along with not having a spending plan or a budget that are like when kids reach for the stove and they burn themselves, they won't reach for it again. That's called natural consequences. We're trying to protect you from the natural consequences of not creating a spending plan or a budget in which you get into a vicious cycle of debt that is very hard to get out of. All right. Even if you start making a lot of good money, it is very hard to get into debt, get out of debt. And it's the cycle of debt. And again, we're going to discuss that here in this unit. So you're going to have to create your own spending plan based on your own needs at that time, and it's going to change often. So the question here is, why is it important to customize income and spending plans based on individual needs? Well, it's just to ensure that your plan is realistic and that meets your individual needs. You can't, me as a teacher can be like, I want to own a jumbo jet. That's not a realistic plan. I have 2 kids. My spending plan very much involves making sure that I can provide for my family. That is very different than my spending plan 20 years ago, which was like, survive. So it is very much all about your individual needs and to be realistic about what type of lifestyle you can live based on your income. All right, that's what I got for you guys today. See you guys tomorrow.